All right, we're good. Hello, guys. Hey, guys. I'm with special guest, Mr. Lindy, Endzone. So, first time ever collaborating with this young man. Well, except for one other time. We did that one stream with Mitchell, but pretty much just first time getting on here one-on-one, talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, talking about the offseason, a lot of other stuff. So what's up, bro? How are you doing today, man? It's good to have you.
I'm all right, man. I'm good. Yeah, Mitch brought me in I think Mitch brought me in the last minute of that stream.
Right. He just sent you the link, and then yeah, it was good though, man. It was good though. So yeah, I really enjoyed talking with you that day. So the Philadelphia Eagles have always had a rather a quiet. We're not usually like a team that has a loud off season. If you look at the past several years, it hasn't been like that. But the thing is, this off season has been more dramatic, I would say. When you start from the top, the biggest headline was the Carson Wentz situation, all the drama, all the stuff that led to him ending up being traded to the Indianapolis Colts. So let's start with that first, since that's really the big thing of the offseason that happened. So what do you really think? What do you really think went wrong with that situation? Do you think it's Wentz's fault, or do you think it's people around him's fault? Do you think there's stuff he could have done better? Do you think that we're gonna regret having gotten rid of him and other stuff like that? Just give me your whole thoughts on the situation.
Well, I mean, from the top down, whether it's the front office and it come down to coaching and players' perspective, it was like a never-ending carousel of a battle between accountability and Carson at times just never really felt that he was like the ultimate leader of that team, that he wasn't respected enough in the front office. The combination of drafting Jalen Hurts and the team spent a second-round pick on him. It's like, well, dude, like, he suffers those multiple injuries, and he watches Nick Foles finish his job in 2017. Then you go to 2018, he gets hurt again after 11 games, and it's like it was like a never-ending cycle for him, and trying to figure out what the organization actually thinks of this guy, even after he was paid, which is it's very confusing to say the least. But all in all, I think he's obviously he's in a better position now. He's already talked about it on the Pat McAfee show, and it's a shame that we didn't find this out sooner. He admitted himself that this is a culture that players that it's not built for all players. There was times where he did feel like out of place in the culture, which is it's shocking to hear, because I mean the AO1 Foundation was pretty successful in Philly for what he did for the community, and how he just touched the fan base in special ways. Pause. What I mean with that, like one of our best kids in Giovanni, how much Carson meant to Gio, and just to go to that point, it's a shame the way that it collapsed, how it did. I guess it's fair to say Wentz did quit in a sense, because I guess he never felt like he could get to the top of the mountain. But all in all, it seems to be like a win-win situation right now. We have a more of an atmosphere of less tension, and for new beginnings with the way they are, you can't really complain.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Just a few things I would add to that. And we got a lot of regulars in the building tonight. Bacon Grizzler and Reaper and Mitch, and a lot of these guys are here. But you know what? He says Carson Wentz he kind of gave up on the team. And here's what I think he means by that, and here's what I mean by that. When he was first traded to the Indianapolis Colts, they asked him about this situation and, you know, what went wrong. And then he said basically that the Eagles, he gave up on the team. You know, he pretty much said, I'm done. The day he got benched, he knew he was finished. He knew he wasn't going to try to come back. He doesn't know if he could have came back to Philly and possibly won the quarterback competition under Sirianni's coaching staff. And, you know, when they went out and got all these guys from the Indianapolis Colts, a lot of people were saying, well, you know, they want to bring Indianapolis to Carson Wentz because they know that he was successful with Frank Reich. So, you know, you want to try to bring some of those philosophies over here, but it didn't really matter to Wentz. And he wasn't thrilled. I mean, no one would be thrilled about being benched, but you have to hold yourself accountable, and you cannot expect nothing to happen if you continuously make the same mistakes. If I'm working at my job and I do the same thing every week and I make the same critical errors every week, I am going to get held accountable for that. I could potentially end up getting fired if it happens too many times. So it happened too many times on the field, and people were calling for Jalen Hurts to actually play a lot sooner than he actually did, you know, and it didn't happen until it was kind of almost the end of the season. So I don't think Wentz was held accountable by really anyone in the organization. I don't think I think a lot of the things that he didn't do well, they didn't bring him up. They didn't call him out about it. So it was kind of a tough situation to look at. A lot of his errors came from his mechanics that were kind of rough, and he didn't really put work into those either. So I feel like just the accountability is really what led to his decline and his eventual departure from Philly.
You would have thought that he would have been one of the least affected players, especially going into that COVID season of 2020, on how established he was as a quarterback already. That's a shame.
Yeah, it really was, man. But let's move on to something different. Obviously, we moved on from Wentz, and now here comes Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, he had some highs and he had some lows in those 4 games that he did start. I think he showed some good things. I think he showed some things he needed to work on. So what are your expectations of him? What do you think he can do with this team? And do you think he could be the future quarterback for the Eagles?
Well, I think, you know, with the fans' perspective right now, they're like, you know, there's people that are on the train and then they're off the train. You know, you can make a case for both sides, saying that, you know, people want to say that he is the future, and then, you know, people want to say that he's not. You know, me personally, I don't think that he has enough experience under his belt yet to really determine on where he is as a quarterback. They did a pretty good job of building around him so far. I mean, one of the best things they could have done was give him a former teammate, Devontae Smith, arguably the best receiver out of the draft. You know, they already built a chemistry over at Alabama, and then they can just continue to build on it in the NFL. That was perfect. I dropped a video on that as soon as it happened. Like that was the perfect pick for Jalen Hurts. You couldn't have done a better job. You know, between that, obviously they had to solidify the offensive line a little better. They bring in Landon Dickerson, which is still a bit of a question mark as to why he hasn't signed his rookie contract yet. But it is still late June. They have until, I think, up until the start of training camp to get something done. It's just weird that he's the last one. You know, like your first round pick, they're done. Your later picks are done, but it's like the second round.
A lot of it has to do with his injuries that he's been dealing with the past couple of years. They just want to work something out so they're not in a bad spot where they gotta, pay this guy millions of dollars if he tears his ACL again, which we hope doesn't happen, of course.
But I just don't want us to really underrate Jalen Hurts as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we already see like the kind of like the disciplinary, attitude and Devontae Smith, how he carries himself, the responsibility that he possesses, the seriousness that he puts into his craft. Well, Jalen's the same way, and and it's just hilarious how these like these Giants fans want to call a guy like Daniel Jones better, and and to be fair, yeah, he's got the NFL experience, but I mean, Jalen Hurts going into this year with as much potential as there is, especially with the coaching staff and the the better coordinators that we've gotten. There's a lot of optimism there, but no, I think Hurts is set up pretty damn well, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is that we're not done yet. We still need some corners. We definitely need at least 1 to 2 outside corners. The guys that we have, I'm not really banking on right now. But other than that, we're in a spot right now where we have a lot less holes than we did going into the season, and obviously that's one thing that you have to clean up first.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with a lot of what you said about Jalen Hurts. I do think he has a lot to prove. I don't think that he, I'm not going to sit here and say he's this great quarterback already. But I think he did a lot of good things that he can build on going into this year. It's like you said, this guy has a monster work ethic. The things that he doesn't do well, I think he will almost obsess over those things. That's how hard of a worker he is. When you look at his history, you can ask any of his coaches that's been around him since high school. Nick Saban with Alabama. They rave about his leadership and they rave about his work ethic. Yeah, I think those are two of the most important things to be a quarterback in the NFL and have. It's not just what you do on the field; it's how you command. You have that leadership in the locker room, and you command that huddle of those grown men. So I definitely think Hurts is going to have a chip on his shoulder because a lot of people are doubting him. A lot of people don't think he's going to be a good quarterback. It kind of reminds me of a Lamar Jackson type of situation because Lamar is a guy who he did win a league MVP, but even though he won a league MVP, people still say that he can't play quarterback in the NFL. He can't make the throws. He can't do anything just because that's just the narratives that they like to put out about these type of quarterbacks who are dual threats that can run very effectively. But I think Jalen Hurts, I don't think he's a terrible passer. And I think with this new coaching staff, they're going to help him with his mechanics and his throwing motion and other things to help him be a much better quarterback than he was last year. And then not only that, you can see that he's coming into a much better situation than he was last season. When you look at the Eagles last year, different starting offensive line almost every game. Receiving core, you had some guys who were older, like Jeffrey. You had guys that were getting injured, Deshaun Jackson. The young guys didn't really get to go out there and thrive and play and show what they could do. Like when Travis Fulgham was playing well early in the season, Jeffrey came back, and then it just seemed like he wasn't the same after that. It seemed like he got figured out, and then it seemed like he just didn't have the same rhythm anymore because he wasn't getting the same amount of snaps with Jeffrey there. So when you look at this receiving core, Greg Ward and Rager and Devontae Smith, obviously, and Travis Fulgham, there's a lot of guys that it looks like a good young group of guys. A lot of guys that are hungry, a lot of guys that want to show what they can really do. And Hurts wants to do that as well. So you know what? When you look at all that stuff, I think it's a recipe to be successful.
Well, I mean, there's actually a system in place this time. Hurts doesn't just get thrown into the fire after Wentz's benching or throughout the year that they're only just putting him on like read option gadget plays. Like, no, That's not what Jalen Hurts is. Jalen Hurts is not a Taysom Hill type of quarterback. I mean, we've
No.
seen what Taysom Hill did for the Saints. What he did as a starter is just not sustainable. And the Saints were asking for Drew Brees back even when he was hurt. So I mean, it's a shame. And you brought up Travis Fulgham, and like the one thing about Travis is that over the course of those 4 games and the problem with his sustainability was the fact that it was said that he was having a hard time absorbing the success that he was going through against these defenses, and it got to his head a little bit. He had an ankle issue that he had to get a procedure done on, and then when he came back, it's like he wasn't,
Right.
I said he wasn't necessarily the same. And then of course, Alshon Jeffrey did have something to do with that. I don't care what Aaron Moorhead says. As the Philly media asked Aaron Moorhead the same question at his presser if the return of Alshon affected Travis Fulgham's play, and he said no, he doesn't think so. Well, turns out a lot of the fans
I disagree.
we don't agree with you there, Aaron. We're sorry. I mean, that was just a means of contract justification. They paid Alshon, more than he should have gotten because he couldn't stay on the field. He had the Liz Frank injury with his, with the foot, and then battling on and off between 2018 and he wasn't necessarily healthy in 19, and then he goes through it again in 20. We're not in a situation now where it's one man's trash is another man's trash. Hurts is given a clean slate. It seems that he's the prohibited number 1 quarterback of the team. There's no way Flacco is beating him out. There's just no way. I don't know why people thought that when we signed Joe Flacco that Hurts was going to lose the starter spot. There's just no way it's going to happen. And Nick Mullins is not going to end up being the backup either. I just don't see that happening either. Mullins is going to be a good camp piece, especially to help out some of these receivers that want to try and make it into the 53. But we're definitely in a better place than we were last year, and I think that kind of camouflage that that COVID year put over the football team and dealing with the injuries, and then the protocol that was new to everybody. It was the entire thing was a recipe for disaster, and it's good this year to hit the reset button.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And when it comes to Jeffrey, it's like you said. I mean, this guy was just getting playing time because of his contract. That's never something that I've been a fan of. I feel like no matter if you have a contract or whatever, the best players should be playing at all times. That's just my philosophy on it, and I think that's yours as well. But we got another good question from Grizz over here, and we were just talking about this a few minutes ago. Should we be concerned about Landon Dickerson not signing his rookie contract yet? I wouldn't say concerned. I wouldn't say be concerned about it. I think it's just something that the team want to cover themselves in case something else happens with Landon, because Landon he's had his share of injuries in his college career. So, if something happens, and we hope it doesn't happen, but this is football. People get career-ending injuries every day. So, they're probably trying to put the right incentives in case he does stay healthy. He'll get bonuses and things like that. Or if he does get hurt, they won't have to guarantee his salary and other things like that. Because you got to understand, the NFL is also business. It's not just you pay these guys to go play football and that's it. Teams they gotta cover themselves as well. So those are my thoughts on the whole Landon situation.
No, they're just completely prolonging the negotiations just on trying to figure out the current conditioning of Landon's health. That's all it really is. And I think one of the aside from what Landon's telling them, I think one of the bigger like contributing opinions to that would definitely have to come through Jeff Stoutland, the greatest offensive line coach in the NFL. obviously the opinion that Jeff has is monumental. It's huge. Based on that and the fact that rookie minicamp didn't last very long, so they didn't see him for too long on the field. But yeah, that's all that this is. Before they go into training camp, it's just them prolonging the negotiations, and I'm sure within due time that they're going to come up with a middle ground. There's no way, you invested a second round pick into this guy, you took the gamble. There's no way that you don't get something done.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, not too much to be concerned about there, Grizz. I think everything's going to work out in the end. But let's move on to some other stuff. So the Eagles did not have a lot of room to work with as far as salary cap. They were kind of in cap hell in a sense, but they did make a few additions in free agency. They obviously drafted Devontae Smith, drafted Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams, some other guys that people are excited about, think they can make an impact. So of all the guys that we did bring in, who do you think was our biggest and best pickup of the offseason?
The best pickup. It's you would think if you'd ask a lot of people this, it'd be a trick question. Like is this a trick question? Well, I mean, I think the majority of the fan base would say Devontae Smith, and it's not even close. Yep. I mean, we're in such a position right now of like a retooling process, because I don't think it's entirely a rebuild. We're just retooling what we lost from the COVID season, and trying to remove some of the dysfunction that was left over, which we did a decent job of, even though to most people one of the biggest problems still remains in the front office and Howie Roseman. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there, because his contract is up at the end of the season. What Jeffrey Lurie decides to do, but like it's such a massive impact. What Devontae Smith brings to the receiver room. I don't know if any of the other selections in the draft class match the impact that they bring to their position group. You could say maybe Landon Dickerson comes second, and that's almost obvious because of his versatility and being able to play every position. But he has red flags on him because of his knees. So where Devontae is absolutely healthy. Like we said, he's arguably the best receiver in this draft class. And you don't. It's been almost like 3 decades since a receiver has won the Heisman. You take that into consideration. You take into the fact that Devontae is like an all-around receiver. Yeah, he doesn't necessarily have the size, which is not a big deal whatsoever. He's about 6'6'1".
Yeah,
you'll take that. And then people want to talk about his weight and everything, big deal. Deshaun Jackson has the same build, and he ended up being one of the best deep threat receivers of all time. I mean, people have him up there with Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. So
absolutely.
Let's calm down about that. And like I said, what he brings to that wide receiver group is not only does he bring the experience as a top tier receiver from college, but he also brings probably the strongest competition in that room to begin with. Like the aura that he possesses around him, and he's going to want to make the rest of his teammates play better. And it's not even just that. You talk about route running, like he's obviously the best route runner in the receiver room. I think Aaron Moorhead said that I think it's who is it? Travis Fulgham is like one of the best in there too. I think he mentioned Travis, and then I heard something about Arthega Whiteside, believe it or not. Something along the lines of what
very interesting.
Well, but No, I mean, yeah, I think Devontae Smith is. I think he was obviously the best pick, and yeah, he provides a whole lot more, to this team from just a talent perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The best pickup is obviously Devontae Smith. You bring up that he was don't quote me on this, but I'm not sure. Was Desmond Howard the last wide receiver who actually won the Heisman Trophy? Don't quote me on that, but I think that sounds right. So when you look at what he did at Alabama last year, it was crazy. Jalen Waddle, who went to the Miami Dolphins, he went down, and Devontae Smith pretty much there was no turning back after that, and he really showed what he can do. And just because he's small or whatever people want to say he is, that doesn't mean he can't play. Because you can either play or you can't, no matter what size you are. You know what I mean? Because look at we were just talking about JJ. This guy is 6'2", 6'3", and he was supposed to be the new replacement of Alshon Jeffrey. And guess what? Guy just can't play. The guy just can't play. You can either play or you can't. It doesn't matter what size you are. The guy has an insane catch radius too. He can make any catch. He can jump extremely high. The guy's got pretty good hands. Route running. He's got the full package of any receiver that you would want to bring in. And I think he brings to the table a lot of things that we did not have and haven't really had for a number of years now at that position. So obviously, I think that's also the best move that we made. But there's some other moves that I think are worth mentioning that I don't think people really speak too much about. When you look at free agency, like I said, we didn't have a lot of money to spend. But one of the moves that we made that I really like is Anthony Harris coming over to Minnesota, taking Jalen Mills' spot, and Jalen obviously went to the New England Patriots. So good, so good for him. But I feel like that was an underrated move for us because Anthony Harris he brings a lot to the table at the safety position, and I think he is actually an upgrade over Jalen Mills. So I think our secondary, if we did get a solid corner like Steven Nelson, for example, I think our secondary starting wise, or like meaning the guys that are going to start, I think we would be pretty decent back there. Believe it or not, with Slay, get another corner. And then you got other guys too, like Kevon Wallace, who people are excited about because Jonathan Gannon, he's got defensive back coaching in his background, which Jim Schwartz did not have. So that is why I feel like a lot of these DBs are going to be put in a better situation. So I really liked Anthony Harris pickup. Another pickup I really liked was another guy coming from the Minnesota Vikings, Eric Wilson. And the Minnesota, they had a lot of injuries to their linebacker position. I think Kendricks and Barb both missed time. Don't quote me on that, but he had to step up last year, and he was very productive, and he got the job done. So I feel like he could provide something as well. So there's actually quite a few moves that we did make in the draft and free agency that I really liked. But overall, I just feel like the team's in a much better spot than it was. And Grizz brings up a good point, like Ryan Kerrigan as well. That was like a move that was very unexpected for me because I remember hearing him write one of those PR goodbye, thank you, Washington football team letters. And then the very next day, the guy signs with the Eagles. And I was very surprised by that, but it could be like a Chris Long type of a signing. If he does still have stuff in the tank when you add him to the D line, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Hargrave, other guys like Josh Sweat, Barnett. The D line looks like it's going to be in a good spot too. So overall, there are a lot of moves that we did make that weren't splashy, but I think could still add some value.
I think the moves are more not splashy. Obviously we don't want to use that word. I think they're more practical on what Jonathan
Yeah.
Gannon wants to do. The defense is not going to be plagued by the Jim Schwartz style anymore. No sticks defense anymore. The DB's playing, 5 to 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. We're not going to see that anymore. We're not going to see a means of the defensive linemen just pinning their ears back, and all they have to do is go after the quarterback. That type of, that type of play just can that leads to like exhaustion. I mean, how many times did we see, Fletcher Cox trying to battle through, double team after double team? It's like you continue to feed these guys to the wolves as to try and penetrate the offensive line all the time. There's really no means of making the quarterback think because there's a lack of disguises, post snap or pre snap or whatever, like moving linebackers around. The corners had no safety help. It's just like it was too much of a bend don't break. And I do like that Jonathan Gannon is going to want to add, a bit of substance to this defense to help try to mask some of the deficiencies in the secondary, especially. And, and obviously they suffered because our second level wasn't as talented with the linebackers. I mean, I don't want to bring up the quote unquote white snake again, but Nathan Gary was such a that's what his nickname was, man. Like, really? Come on. The dude was a disaster. I mean, he was
an absolute disaster. And now he's the San Francisco 49ers disaster.
So
which is a good thing for us. That's a good thing for us. That should be on my top list of best moves of the offseason, not bringing back Nate Gary, because I actually like some of these young linebackers that we have. I'm not really sold on any of them being stud linebackers, but I think some of these guys can be solid. I like Singleton a lot. He was making a lot of tackles for us last year. Sean Bradley, when he was on the field, he did a little bit of stuff, but a lot of these guys just haven't really got a real chance to get on the field. Yeah, Davion Taylor as well. TJ Edwards is another dude that I like. So I like some of these guys. I don't think we're overly talented at the position by any means. But I don't feel as bad about the linebacker spot as I have the past few years, especially with Gary being here. And I think Wilson coming in as a vet, I think he can provide some stuff for us, some good stuff.
We're talking about Eric Wilson as a veteran. He's only 26. That's a pretty good building piece right there. And
so if he has a good year, you could potentially bring him back, and
sure,
you'll have a guy at that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's I think it's fair to say that linebackers have they're like a science lab over there. The linebackers have the most projects, and it's not even close. There's a lot of conversions over there. You talk about Joe Osman converted to linebacker. Jannard Avery moved to linebacker. Patrick Johnson is going to end up being a linebacker. Jacoby Stevens is going to end up being a linebacker. Who is it? The other defensive end. Teron Jackson. I think they're going to work him in there a little bit too. They're going to try and do a lot with that second level and try and figure that out. But they're set pretty well so far behind guys like Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton's a big favorite right now, and I think TJ Edwards is a little bit behind those guys. Like it's funny because they all have similar things to work on, but. Yeah, I'm not necessarily as worried as I was before. And then we might even see a little versatility from a guy like Ryan Kerrigan. There's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of potential there. It's the same thing for the defensive line. It's just that we just need to build something in that secondary.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you bring up a lot of good points. And JC, he weighs in about Jonathan Gannon. It's going to be interesting to see how he runs his defense, because when he's been asked about it, he hasn't really said if he's gonna what kind of system he's gonna run. He's just like, look, we're gonna put these guys in the position to be successful. So whatever kind of scheme that is, whatever kind of plays he's going to put in for these guys, that's what it's going to be. And I think that's what it should be. I don't think you should always be dead set on this is our system, this is what we're going to run no matter what. You got to find out what works for your guys first, and then whatever works for your guys, that's what's going to help you be more successful. So I'm also interested to see how Gannon is gonna do this stuff. So I can't really say that I know what kind of scheme he's gonna put in. But one thing I do know is I think he's gonna put these guys in position to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, he's brought up the hits principle before. I wish I could remember it off the top of my head, but he's brought up the hits principle in a presser. He's thrown some like indirect kind of shade to Jim Schwartz at times, which I got a kick out of. I thought it was comical. But no, man, there's like we've been saying, there's a lot of optimism here. It's just, with some of these guys taking new promotions at their positions. I mean, Sirianni's a first-time head coach, and Gannon's a first-time defensive coordinator, and then how he works with his new guys on the coaching staff, and Nick Rallis being the linebackers coach at 27 years old. That's an interesting one there. But he seems pretty intelligent and pretty collaborative, with what Jonathan Gannon is asking these players to do, and that's all you can ask for, is a coaching staff actually being on the same page and wanting the same goals to happen. We didn't necessarily see that last year because they tried like too many different experiments,
right.
bringing in these random guys like Rich Scangarello with his weird position, and then Marty Morningwig comes back at his spot. Like there was too many coordinators, too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. Everybody seems to have their own place now, that it makes it easier to like open your ears instead of keeping them closed at times, that Doug Peterson may have wanted to do, since it was his way or the highway with his offense. But I think that's where a guy like Nick Sirianni is going to differ a little bit. He's open to suggestions. Jonathan Gannon is open to hearing from his coaching staff. That was one thing that Nick Rallis was talking about. Like those are the little things that that can create a bigger picture in how well this football team plays on the field.
Yeah, definitely, man. You bring up a lot of good points once again. But with all those assistants and consultants and stuff, it was just rough. And that was the problem with Doug Peterson, was that he wasn't really open to suggestions. And I really like Doug. I do. But that's just the way he was. He was kind of arrogant is a strong word, but he was a little bit cocky after he did win the Super Bowl. I think a lot of out coaching Bill Belichick on that stage went to his head, and then after that, it was just kind of rough. That's just what my theory is with Doug and all that stuff. But with Nick coming in, it's going to be interesting because there is more structure. You do have a real OC, you do have real quarterback coach, real defensive coordinator. Like you do have guys that know what they're supposed to be doing. So I think it's going to be better. I think the staff is going to do what they got to do to get the most out of these players, and we're really going to see what we have in certain guys that are unknowns. We're going to see what we have with Jalen Hurts. We're going to see what we have with guys on this defense. We're going to see what we have with the receivers, running backs, so on and so forth. And I think that is why you got to be excited about this new staff, because it's kind of like a breath of fresh air,
It was I mean, and then at the same time, you still do have to wonder, like even after the 2019 season when we won the last 4 games and we miraculously ended up getting into the playoffs, like somebody had to have been hitting the wrong buttons in the off season to where Doug Peterson at one of his last press conferences was talking about like who was it that he was going to bring back? It was Corey Underlin and Mike Groh. Like he said, them guys are definitely going to be back. And then the next day we hear that they're let go, that they're fired. Like, somebody had to have caused some sort of distrust in the front office, to have like that kind of confusion, like, from one day to the next. And now we just have to hope that everybody is on the same page this time. And I think that was one of the biggest things going into the Nick Sirianni hiring, that there was a lot of people that weren't necessarily on par on it, like on page with it, because they felt that Sirianni was a yes man. And I just don't want I don't want that narrative to continue to be built upon and continue. But Sirianni is his own person. I do love the push for accountability and bringing in players that actually like have a passion, like they love the game of football, and you see that when they're on the field and they're playing the game. Intelligence is a big thing to them. So yeah, obviously it's a breath of fresh air, and we can say all these positives right now and what we like towards the upcoming season of week 1. But at the same time, there is still a bit of cause for pause, because we have to see how these, I guess, maybe intangibles or tangibles, how they get displayed on the football field.
Right. I'm not. Yeah. It's like you can't anoint these guys. There's a lot of unknowns, but it's just like I said. I think it's a breath of fresh air, and we just needed to turn the page on the Doug Peterson era. Even though Grizz does kind of bring up an interesting point, and this is sort of the way that I felt, but kind of in a different way, as far as Doug Peterson being used as a scapegoat. I do think that's true, but I think it's true not because people are trying to protect Wentz or anything like that. I think it's because they're trying to protect Howie. I think they were trying to cover his ass instead, because usually when you see a team that gets rid of a head coach in the fashion that we did, usually the head coach and the general manager, they're tied at the hip. You're right. So you get rid of one guy, you get rid of one guy, you get rid of the other. So when Doug was let go, I was like, okay, Howie's gonna get he's gonna get let go, and he wasn't. So in a way, I don't feel like it was fair to Doug. I feel like Doug did bring a lot of it on himself, but there was a lot of issues with the team that was bigger than just coaching. A lot of his plays were dull and stale and predictable, which was a huge problem. But Wentz was also a huge problem, and Howie was also a huge problem. So, everyone played a part in that 4-win season. So I don't think it was really fair to, put everything on Doug, because I think there was plenty of blame to go around.
Yeah, that offense was just putrid, and I think it's safe to say, like, when you embrace and when you earn and achieve that kind of success that they did, with Doug being a Super Bowl winning head coach, and for us not to necessarily see a lot of changes in the offense, it was like, he stuck to what he felt worked based on the amount of success that he's seen from it. But when you do that and you don't match the talent that you had that won the Super Bowl, that's when things start to change a little bit, because you get rookies in there that aren't necessarily understanding where they have to be at certain points or route concepts, and the quarterback and the receivers, and there's lack of chemistry there, or they're not on the same page. That's when things start to tear down a little bit. But yeah, man, it was at least it's over. At least it's over. But
It's over.
no, that was.
It was kind of it was a brutal season for 2020, but it is in the rear view. So let's move on to some stuff about this season. So training camp is going to be here before you know it. Eagles expected to report by July 27th. That is also my birthday. So I'm excited for training camp. I'm excited for competition, because the one thing that about sports that people got to understand is competition. It's not just your competition as in who you're playing. A lot of it has to do with who you're competing against on your own team. And that's what you're going to see in this upcoming training camp. So there's going to be a lot of guys battling for position. There's going to be a lot of guys battling to be starters. Some guys are going to be on the bubble that we don't even know are going to make the team this year. Some guys may be put on the practice squad just because we have so much depth at certain positions, running back being one of them, receivers another interesting one. But as far as the competitions, what position group, what competition are you looking forward to the most in this upcoming training camp?
Ooh, that's a good one.
There's a lot.
I think there's two on offense and then there's one on defense. I'm not going to necessarily say two on defense, because linebacker, there's too many projects over there. Yeah. But the one on defense is going to be corner with all the players that we still do have, and one guy that people don't continue to mention. I think we still have Crayvon LeBlanc on this roster. I never really hear much of him anymore, but I still think he's on the roster. We still got, obviously Darius Slay is going to be the number one. There's no question there. And that fight for the number 2 corner spot on the outside. You got guys like Michael Jaquette and Josiah Scott, who we got from Jacksonville, Nate Metters from the Vikings as well. We don't want Avonte Maddox out there again. He's got to work elsewhere. Unfortunately, because I mean he has those kind of intangibles to want to be better. It's just that that position didn't necessarily fit him. And then you think about a guy like Josiah Scott, and they're very similar builds, but to me, I think Avonte's a little bit faster, and but he's just not as understanding position wise. He got beat too much, and I think one thing that I need to see from Jonathan Gannon for these corners is that I don't want their back to the football as much anymore. Look, if you have position, if you're in a good position with your corner and he doesn't have you beat, just try and locate the football. We've seen that too many times. Guys had their backs to the football, whether it was in a red zone drill. And I remember quite a few of those. I think there was a couple in some of the Washington games that we had where I think who was it? I think it was Chris Sims got hit in the back of the end zone for the touchdown, and then the DB just didn't look for the football at all, and it was fed through the needle. There's just no contest there to want to try and swap the ball down or intercept it. So that's one thing that I'm looking for from this cornerback spot is not only the competition, but just the concept of trying to force interceptions and locate the football if you have good position. Guys like Craig James are looking to make an impact there. Zach McPherson, the rookie, I mentioned Michael Jaquette, but still, when you have all those guys in the back of your mind, nobody really stands out. And until we get a number 2 corner that can play the outside, preferably a veteran, it's probably not going to be top tier. It'll be closer to bottom of the barrel, closer to veteran minimums or under $5 million. The options aren't necessarily there. So I think that's my spot of competition on defense to look at most is going to be corner, and I think it's going to be corner for the longest time. Offense, it's going to be between wide receiver and running back, and obviously being we already know the wide receiver group and what they bring to the table, but running backs is very interesting, and it's only because that we still have guys like Boston Scott on the roster. Elijah Holyfield, he's trying to come up. He got his, he got a what is it called? I forget the actual term of the contract, but a designation. He got a rookie designation, so he got that. Adrian Killens got another 2 years. Boston Scott is still here. Jason Huntley is still here. Then you bring in Kenny Gainwell from the draft. You bring back Jordan Howard. You claim Kerryon Johnson off of waivers. And then at the very top, you got Miles Sanders. So it looks like it's going to be a battle for that number 2 spot. And I don't necessarily think at the same time that we're going to completely go away from a running back by committee system. I think there's just too much talent to really display there, and it offers a lot of diversity in your play calling when it comes to game day. But I do want to see the battle specifically between Jordan Howard and Kerryon Johnson, and then from a receiving perspective, I want to see where Kenny Gainwell takes his skills to the next level. So I'm more intrigued about the running backs than I am the receivers, but we're in a good place competition-wise at all 3 positions I mentioned.
Right. I think you bring up a lot of good points. I'm with you with the receiver position. I think that's one of the spots that I have my eye on the most, because it's like I was mentioning earlier in the show. There's a lot of young guys who got talent, who are hungry, who want to play. But there's only a certain amount of spots. So obviously, Jalen Reagor and Devontae Smith, those are our last 2 first-round picks. They're going to be playing. But after that, that's where it gets interesting. You got Fulgham and Greg Ward, obviously, who's been reliable, who's earned his way up onto the team after being a practice squad guy. Fulgham was a practice squad guy, too. And then you got other young dudes like John Hightower, and you got other guys like Quez Watkins. And then you get to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and then he's kind of pretty much on the bubble. And a lot of people wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't make the team. But after you get to that 4th or 5th wide receiver, that's when you got to wonder who's going to not be on the 53-man roster. Who's going to be not dressing for games? Who's going to be on scout team? Who's going to be practice squad? Because when I look at Hightower and Quez, I think one of those 2 guys is going to have to end up taking that spot with since Devontae's coming in. I would go with Devontae Smith, Travis Fulgham, Jalen Reagor, and then Greg Ward, and then it gets interesting after that. So I think Quez and John are gonna have a battle in camp, and whoever emerges at the top, I think that's going to be our 5th wide receiver. The other guy will be on the practice squad. That's what I'm looking at too. And on defense, look at all the guys that they brought in on the defensive line. And Milton Williams is a guy that a lot of these guys think is coming along really nicely. Some people like Brandon Graham have actually said, this guy really has a lot of talent. So they added more talent at that position. They got Kerrigan coming in. So I feel like with Kerrigan being there as another veteran, is he just going to be a part of the rotation? Is he going to be starting? I think this puts pressure on Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett's in a contract year, and he's a former first-round pick. People forget that Teddy Bridgewater injury, where the Minnesota Vikings traded first-round pick for Sam Bradford. That was the result of that trade. Derek Barnett was. And Derek Barnett, he has a lot of quarterback hits, but he needs to be more productive. Okay. And I feel like with all these guys that we brought in the draft, free agency at defensive end, Josh Sweat too. Josh Sweat, when he's gotten his chance to play, he's been productive too. So I think there's a lot of pressure there on Barnett. I think the whole defensive line competition is going to be interesting too. But wide receiver and defensive line are the two positions that I'm looking forward to. But the running back room is also stacked, like you said. After Miles Sanders, it's anyone's guess who's going to be behind him. Is going to be Kerryon. It's going to be Jordan. Boston Scott's been with us for the past few years. You don't know how that's gonna shape up, and a lot of people are very excited about Kenny Gainwell, and they think he can bring a lot to the table and potentially be a steal. So we're gonna see how that situation plays out. But that's where I'm at with this training camp. The positions that I'm looking at, it's going to be very fun and interesting to watch.
Well, Kenny Gainwell was already a steal out of the draft. I mean, this is a kid that only that he opted out of 2020. Had he played and put up a similar statistical year as he did in 2019, I don't think we're seeing him fall to the 5th round. So we already stole him there. It's just how he takes those steps to the next level in the NFL. And then you talk about Milton Williams, and I think he was one of the more unpopular picks at the time because everybody was like, "Oh, we gotta take a corner in the 3rd, man. There was corners on the board. Why didn't you take a corner?" But as Howie backed up his decision, he said that I've been doing this for years. Is that it's you build from the trenches out, and there's validity in that, obviously. But no, it's crazy to hear. It's crazy to hear all the compliments now that a guy like Milton Williams is getting from these veteran players, and he was one of the more unpopular picks when it came to the draft, because it felt like he was more of a analytics pick, like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was in his draft class. We fell in love with him enough to take him in the 2nd over DK Metcalf, and I hate that I'm bringing up that kind of a nightmare again, but it's true that it's true that both JJ and Milton were that they were both analytics picks, and the reason being for JJ is because he was I think he was like the best jump ball receiver in the country on the 50-50 catch percentage. It was like 96% or something. And then, Milton Williams, all of his measurables matched to a guy like Aaron Donald. And I think we fell in love with that because he's like he's an undersized tackle that's very, very athletic. I think what he ran like a 4.6 or something, that he's like he's that good, he's that good a shape. But yeah, man, sure, I'm good. I'm on par with the defensive line spot as well. I mean, we picked up that guy in the 6th that seems pretty serviceable, and Marlon Tuipulotu out of USC. He's supposed to be a good run stuffer, guys like that. But yeah, man, yeah, I don't
say that guy's name again.
It's Marlon Tuipulotu.
We're gonna have to come up with a name with him, like Big V. Because that's just a tongue twister for me. Just me.
Well,
but,
Big T.
Big T.
Big T.
Big T.
Big T.
That's what we're gonna call him. But before we end the show here, let's share our breakout players, offense and defense. Who you got?
Breakout players. Well, I think if I were to mention Devontae Smith, that would be cheating, because I think that's everybody's like obvious expectation.
Yeah.
Offensive breakout player. Okay. Now, I'm going to do this from a realistic standpoint. I'm going to be realistic about this.
Good.
One of my breakout player is either going to be Dallas Goedert or Miles Sanders. And reason being is because that they're both, Dallas is right now, he's in contract negotiations for an extension. So he's going to have to prove that he's worth the money that he could potentially be getting with Zach Ertz on the outs.
And Miles Sanders could very well also be a breakout player because he's playing for a contract. He hasn't been able to stay on the field consistently due to injury, which hampers his value. The head coach as the play caller in the last couple of years also hampered his value because he didn't
utilize him right.
Let's not bring up that disaster either. He most certainly did not get enough carries, to display his skill set. And this is a guy that went in the second round as well as a guy like Dallas. Miles Sanders was a teammate to Saquon Barkley. Let's remember that. Their skill, the skill is there. So, I mean, for offense, I would have to go with either Goddard or Miles just because, the money is on the line for them. And, they're under, to me, them two can be under the biggest microscope because those are future decisions that we have to think about. Even though we have depth at the running back position, can any one of those necessarily step in right now and be the number one? I wouldn't put my money on it. I think Miles is most suited. So I would say Miles or Dallas Goedert for offense. And then defense, that's going to be a good one. Defense to me, I'm going to go on a limb and say Milton Williams for defense.
Okay.
If he continues to show an athletic prowess in training camp and actually get himself on the field, whether it's not with the first string or in certain package situations where they need a more athletic type of tackle, or if they throw him on the D line, anything to really disrupt the protection of the offensive line, or if you're in a situation where you need a quick sack to run the time down on the clock. I want to see what those measurables bring to the table. So I would say Milton Williams for defense.
Yeah, you know what? I'm with you when it comes to offense. I could see either Miles or Dallas. I'm leaning more towards Dallas, though, because like you mentioned, contract year. He wants to be that guy at the tight end position. The Zach Ertz thing is kind of weird. He's still on the team. Is he still going to be?
Back.
Yeah, Richard Rodgers. That signing really made me think that a trade is imminent for Ertz. But Goddard, this guy can really be a matchup problem. He gets yards after the catch. His hands are not as good as Ertz's, though. But everything else that you want in a tight end, I do think he does better than Zach Ertz does. So you know what? I'm looking for him to get his shine and finally get to go out there and show that, hey, this is why this team drafted me. I'm here to be a number one tight end. So I'm going with Goddard there, and on defense, I'm going to the secondary, and I'm going to Kevon Wallace because everything that we've heard in OTAs that his coaches have said, DB coaches, the Jonathan Gannon as well, this guy has a high IQ, and he's helping a lot of, even though he's only the second-year player, he's still helping these guys understand what they're supposed to do, right? So he's got leadership intangibles. He has a high motor. He plays with a lot of energy. So I feel like he's going to come in and he's going to take that next step, and he's going to be a good piece for us back there at the safety spot. So I'm going Kevon Wallace and Dallas Goedert as my two guys.
I think Kevon Wallace was, I think he was one of those guys that led the charge as a defensive captain for Clemson for at least a couple of years there.
Yep. He sure was. And, that's no small feat because, obviously Dabo Swinney and Clemson have built a really good culture down there. So I'm looking forward to the season, man. So Lindy, if you want to let everybody know what kind of projects that you're working on your channel, feel free to do so. And where other places people can follow you and things of that nature.
Well, as far as projects go, nothing really on the horizon necessarily. Obviously, I'm trying to grow, through my content of, as diverse of a fandom as I have, an Eagles fan liking a Dallas team, who knew, right? But no, I love my Dallas Mavericks. I'm very excited that Dirk Nowitzki is back in the organization again. Well deserved. He is a special advisor to the owner, Mark Cuban, to help their search for a head coach and a general manager. So I'm very excited for that. I was obviously ecstatic in the video that I dropped. So, as far as my Mavericks content goes, that's going to be on a standstill for a little bit until I get more news. But through that and building on my Eagles stuff, do I hate the Clippers? Don't get me started. We should have.
How do you feel about the Clippers being in the West Finals?
Oh man,
beating the Jazz without Kawhi, was that surprising or what?
It's a crazy story though. I mean, the 76ers just seen, Sixers fans just seen the same thing that the Clippers went through. I mean, who would have thought that Terrence Mann would score, 35 plus points for the Clippers, and then, Tyrese Maxey out of nowhere for you guys stepped up in the absence of Ben Simmons, and then Joel Embiid didn't have a very good game. And then I'm still mad about this, but you guys please appreciate Seth Curry that the Mavericks were gullible enough to take Josh Richardson from
the trade should have been illegal. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy. I when I look back at it, I'm like, the Mavs really could have used him in the playoffs, but sometimes these kind of trades just happen, bro.
Well, we were enamored in the defensive skill set that Josh Richardson had, and we were enamored enough to bench him at the end of the season, and he got next to no minutes in the playoffs. So that's how that worked out. Yeah, didn't go over very well. But obviously, y'all know where you can find me on YouTube for my channel, Lindy Endzone, and I'm always on Twitter, hanging out with subscribers and other content creators, in conversations, chilling out over there, looking for news to stay on top of my sports teams. You already know the deal. And then sometimes I'll do some gaming streams every now and then, but I got to keep the focus on, of course, bleeding green and being an MFFL.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Lindy, it's always good to have you, man. We'll definitely look forward to bringing you on here again. So thank you all you guys for watching, and we will see you guys next